Welcome back as we set out to look at the types of capital allowances. My outline, now we are on capital allowances, types of capital allowances. Let's go through types of capital allowances. Types of capital allowances. For types of capital allowances, we'll be looking at one, initial allowance. Let's look at initial allowance. Initial allowance. What is initial allowance? This is a type of capital allowance that is granted in the first year the asset is put to use and once in the life of the asset. So let me bullet point some of the very important points here. It is granted the first year the asset is put to use, in the first year, in the first year, take note of that, and once in the life of the asset, life of the QCE or asset. Are you there? Now, initial allowance is granted on second-hand asset except second-hand building. Initial allowance is also granted on second-hand asset except second-hand building. Okay, granted on second-hand assets, except second-hand building, except second-hand building. Are we there? So we need to get these things down. Okay. So what else? Another characteristic of initial allowance is that apart from the fact that it's granted on second-hand asset except second-hand building, that the initial allowance is not prorated based on the number of months in the basis period. Initial allowance is not prorated. Based on the number of months in the basis period. But where there's element of private use, it will be prorated. Where there's element of private use, it will be prorated. Okay, then, most importantly, initial allowance is obtained by, that's the formula now, initial allowance is obtained by initial allowance rate times cost of assets. IA means initial allowance rate times cost of assets. Are you there? Is equals to initial allowance. I think that's all about initial allowance. Let's go over to the next one. That is, next one now is 2, annual allowance. Annual allowance. For annual allowance, what do we have to say? 1, it is granted every year the asset is put to use. Granted every year. We need to know this. Granted every year. Okay. Every year asset is put to use. 2, annual allowance is prorated. Prorated based on the number of months in the basis period. Based on number of months in basis period. In basis period. Is that okay? And not on the period of use or date of purchase. Let's go. What else do we need to know about annual allowance? That annual allowance is obtained. So annual allowance is obtained. Annual allowance, okay, is equals to, that's the formula now, cost minus IA minus 10 naira x, 10 naira into x, all over n, where n is equals to 100 all over A rate. Need to explain this. So this is the formula for getting annual allowance. The cost. Take the cost of the asset. Of course, you cannot compute annual allowance unless you compute initial allowance first. Take the cost of the asset. Take away the initial allowance you have computed. That's IA there. Take away minus 10 naira x all over. I'll come back to that 10 naira x all over n. N here is expected life of the asset. Expected life of the asset. What that means is how many years will the asset be used for the purpose of the business? What's the lifespan of the asset for the purpose of the business? So how do we get that? 100 all over AA rate. 100 all over AA rate. Remember, under depreciation, when we say an asset is depreciated for 25 years, we'll say invariably it is going to last for 4 years. Why did we get 4 years? You simply take 100 divided by 25, it gives you 4. So that's the same thing here to get the annual allowance. Okay, back to the 10 naira x. In tax, all asset or QC has a residual value. Okay, has a tax residual value. We'll call it TWDV in tax. TWDV. TWDV, okay, stand for tax written down value, or some textbook or material will say TRV, tax residual value. This is what you call net book value in financial accounting, net book value. In tax, we call it tax written down value. Every asset in tax has a TRV, and that is 10 naira. In FA, an asset will have a scrap value, a nil scrap value, isn't it? In tax, nothing like that. There must be 10 naira. So this is the 10 naira coming in here. Okay? But usually, under exam condition, I always advise I leave this 10 naira till the last year in the life of the asset. We'll see it in the question. We'll see that in the question. So you leave the 10 naira in the last year of the asset, and X here stands for the number of assets. So if you have 2 motor vehicles, at the end of the life of the asset, it will be 10 times 2. If it is 3, 10 times 3. Okay? So that's the formula. But note that this formula is for the first year. This formula is for the first year in the life of the asset. Subsequently, in subsequent years, the AA will change. AA in subsequent years. AA in subsequent years. That's after the first year. AA in subsequent years become TWDV is equals to TWDV divided by number of unexpired life. Unexpired life. So that's number of the years remaining. TWDV divided by number of unexpired life. So this is how you get your AA in subsequent years. Okay? Sometimes the examiner could decide to be tricky and then come in with a question. The question will look like this. That in between, during the lifetime of the asset, the AA rate was changed. If the AA rate was changed, take note, if the AA rate was changed, what happens? Let me give you an example. At the start of the business, the AA rate is equals to 25%. You agree with me that this means that the asset has a lifespan of 4 years. Am I right? This is equals to 25%. It has a lifespan of 4 years. What that means is 100 divided by 25 gives me 4. Then suddenly we are told that after 2 years, the AA rate is now changed to is equals to 20%. 20% will give me 5 years. That is 100 divided by 20 will give me 5 years. So what happens? How do you work out the AA? In this case, because the new AA will give me 5 years, and the asset have already used up 2 years. 2 years. My AA will be the TWDV brought forward, as the tax written down brought forward, divided by 3 years, because now 5 minus 2 will give me 3. The unexpired life will be 3 years and not 2 if we are going by 4 years. So that is annual allowance. After this annual allowance, we will go into another type of allowance called investment allowance. Thank you.